Hey,
Hi,
Shimon.
good morning, and good morning, everyone, and welcome to the second session at the online B2B Festival. I'm Shimon Benayoun, Managing Director of Spot on Vision, and I will be your host for this session. For those of you who participate in the first session, thank you for joining the second session. For just those of you who just joined, welcome. So today we are going to dive into a topic that is becoming mission critical in B2B marketing, specifically if you are also considering account-based marketing. So personalizing your website at scale, and more importantly, how to turn those engagements into conversations and relationships and opportunities. Before we get started, Avishai, would you mind sharing your screen?
Sure. Hi, everybody. Thanks, Shimon. Great to be here. All right.
Yes.
So let's just go full screen. And all right.
Before we start with the session, I'd like to just few quick practical notes for the session. In the next slide, Avishai. Um, yes, next slide. Yes, exactly. So if you have any questions, please drop it in the control panel at any time. We will be doing Q&A at the end of the session. So just we will leave time at the end for your questions, but feel free to share it throughout the session. The session is being recorded, and the recording will be shared with you afterwards. So don't worry about the slides as well. And finally, we would like your feedback. So please take a moment to fill out the survey that will pop up after the session so we know how we can improve or get new ideas for the next session. Now, I'm very excited to be joined by Avishai Sharon. He's the CEO and co-founder of Trendemon, and together we will try to explore how we can identify which accounts are visiting your websites and why is it important, how to deliver personalization experience in real time, and how do we measure the impact in your pipeline and revenues. So we know that website is, everybody's top priority. At least I hope so, because this is your visiting card towards new customers, potential customers, but also existing customers. So whether you're just starting with looking at possibilities for personalization or already started with it, you're in the right place. So let me introduce, let have Avishai start. Avishai, over to you.
Thanks, Shimon. Great to be here. And yes, I think, talking about some of the reasons behind why personalization is so important. So just to give a bit of context, Avishai, founder at Trendemon, we do website personalization for B2B companies. We do this by understanding the buyer journey, by mapping content and its impact on pipeline and revenue, and then leveraging those insights for personalization. And so some of the insights that I'll be sharing are from our data, from our analysis of buyer journeys. We've had a recent study on the trends in buyer journeys, buying behavior in B2B, to help understand why we are saying that personalization is an imperative today and not a nice to have. So Shima, what do you say? Let's get started. All right.
Yes, sure. Let's get started. Just mute myself. I think people are quite curious about your story.
Perfect. All right. So in terms of the agenda, we're going to be talking about some of the trends that we're seeing in the B2B space from the data perspective. Then we'll be discussing what are the paradigm shifts that we see are necessary in light of these trends and transitions. And then more practical, how do you actually start doing personalization at scale, depending on the company, the organization that you're with, So depending on your size and maturity level, in effect, right? Because different companies will be able to leverage different capabilities. So you want to be aware of that. And lastly, is a special offer to anybody who stick around to the end. Will be worth it to get something tangible also following the session, which you can use in your own companies pretty much immediately after. So let's start. So just to give a bit of context, what is Trend Demon? So as mentioned, we're a website personalization platform working with B2B companies, helping them turn their existing website and traffic and generating more revenue from their existing website and traffic, content and traffic. We do this by mapping the buyer journey, de-anonymizing the visitors coming in on the account level, and understanding the full journey down to the closed one, down to revenue. From a tech perspective, we're able to consolidate several solutions on different levels, from page level, so A/B testing and replacing or personalizing elements, journey personalization, which are content recommendations, calls for action, as well as a very deep and robust analytics layer, which we'll be talking about in general, how to measure the effectiveness of personalization, which is one of the things that we will also show a live demo of how and what we're doing there. So that's it. That was the full intro into what it is that we do. And let's start with some data. So in the preparation, Shimon and I were talking about what could be interesting to share with a group that could help make the case of why are we talking about personalization in the first place. There are a lot of things you could be doing in account-based marketing and go-to-market in general. So why personalization and why now? And the first thing that we wanted to highlight is increasing anonymity of buyers. We all see this. We all behave like this, right? We don't fill any forms until very late in the buyer journey. We don't want to de-anonymize ourselves. We see this in the data. We see only 6% of buyers actually identify themselves within contacts, identified accounts, all right? And that means that a big part of our buying group is anonymous. So even the people that we're selling to, a lot of them will not be known at the contact level. The other point is that the buying group is growing in size. We see more people taking part in the decision process of buying products, buying solutions in B2B companies. However, their attention is dropping. They are spending less time on the website. They're spending less time reading content. And so this creates an additional challenge. So how do we engage them when we have so little time? And we need to engage an even broader group with different needs. The buying committee is diverse, different people, different agendas, different needs. So we need to address that as well. And the two last stats that I wanted to share are the conversion rates of websites. Always an interesting topic for marketeers. How is the website doing? How should it be performing? And we're looking at it from an account-based perspective. We're looking at the number of accounts that visit versus the ones that have converted into closed won. And we've seen over the past year, we see this trend continue, a dropping in conversion rates to the website. So the website, or it is becoming harder to sell. I think that is the bottom line, right? We all feel this. It is becoming increasingly difficult to compete with all the other solutions, all the other noise and information. And so this creates an additional challenge. And when we look at the full journey in terms of conversion rates, we get this picture, which basically is that over half of the accounts that are visiting the website will not view more than one page. And only 1% will actually evolve into a sales opportunity. So very, very challenging in that sense. So let's talk about what's the required paradigm shift that we need to execute at this point, right? What do we need to change in our approach, not just in our stack or just in our motions? So three things very quickly. The first transition is moving from just one-off campaigns. So thinking of a go-to-market as just a single motion. I'm blasting off to an ICP or to a target account list and expecting magic to happen. Well, that is no longer effective. We have to think about always-on engagement processes. And always-on means that I need to think about how do we engage the buyer across the entire journey, from the very top down to the closed one and even beyond as their customers. So we need to continue that engagement, not just as a sales motion, but as an educational motion. Your buyers want to be educated, they want to learn, they want to develop. We have people in this webinar coming in to listen, not about our product or a specific solution or service, but about new approaches and new insights. So always on engagement. Account level, Shimon and I are very passionate ABMers, so I think account perspectives are super critical for successful B2B go-to-market. But they're not enough, right? Account level gives you a certain part of that picture, very important, but we need to get better resolution also in terms of the buying group. How are different personas engaging and what can we do to improve their engagement? And the last shift, I think, is a bit more difficult because we're always thinking about selling and we're always thinking about that 5% who are in market, right? Which is kind of one of the foundations of ABM. Let's find those people who are now looking to buy a product in our category. And the shift that I'm suggesting, right, that's my thought on it, is that we need to shift from just selling to educating. We need to find what our buyers are interested in learning, and we need to serve that interest, right? It's not just about pitching products. It's about creating this ongoing engagement. And again, this connects to this point at the top of always on engagement. So how are we able to continue this conversation with them and provide value? All right. So moving on very quickly in terms of how do we actually do this, activating without overwhelming. How do we do personalization? And we have a poll for you.
Yes, so we are coming to a first poll of today. We'd like to understand from people that are already started with personalization, what is the biggest challenge, or actually people that haven't started with, what is the challenge they perceive? Is it lack of resources? Is it lack of strategy and clear objectives for their personalization? Is it hard to measure the impact? Is it the data silos and fragmented tech stack that holding you up? Or is it prioritizing short-term vanity wins over things like personalization? So please let us know. Let's give it a few more seconds. Okay, let's close the poll and see the results. So actually, Avishai, we see that lack of resources voted by 67% of the people is the main challenge, and hard to measure the impact. Data silos and fragmented tech stack. And the third one is hard to measure the impact. Avishai, you are also talking to marketeers in different parts of the world. Is it similar to what you see in other countries?
Yeah, I think we're seeing this across the board, that there is, first of all, an overwhelming amount of things and solutions and not enough resources, right? We're always battling with lack of resources. I think that's definitely something we're seeing very clearly. Interesting to talk about silos. I think when we're talking about tech silos, an interesting, I think, result in the survey, I think it talks to about probably in more mature organizations where you have kind of these problems of these fragmented silos that need to be connected. And then, of course, the last one, hard to measure, that's something that we're actually going to also be providing some solutions for. Lack of resources. I think we're going to talk about strategies of doing more with less. I think a big topic, right, over the last few years, how to achieve more with less. So I think it's going to relate to all of these. And of course, how to align data across the board. So these top three concerns, hopefully we'll get some answers in the upcoming slides.
That's cool. Yeah. And of course, AI can give some answers to your question, right?
Yes, definitely. We are the first time, I think it's the first webinar that we've said AI only 15 minutes in, which is, I think, probably a record. So all right, cool. Let's just go back to viewing it and see if that works. Okay, great. So we're talking about, right, lack of resources, lack of strategy, hard to measure, right? Some of those challenges that we've discussed, we walked over the key points. This is what most companies are struggling with as they're thinking about how to achieve personalization or improving their performance from the website, from the first-party data. Now let's talk solutions. We talked data, we talked approaches. Now let's start talking Let's get to the chase. What do we recommend to do, and for who, right? As we've seen on the survey, we have a diverse audience, different people, different company stages. To make things a bit clearer, we would like to divide it into 3 key stages or gears when it comes to starting with personalization. The first gear really is where you have zero bandwidth, your team has no resources, but you still want to leverage some improvements or optimize some of those things. So we're going to talk about what can we do there. Talk about the intermediate level, which is getting into deeper resolutions, segmentation, more ABM approach to personalization. And then the last is really maybe talking about those silos that you have in those organizations. How do we break those silos and get our data and insights out from just the website to sales teams, and help create more alignment with the sales organization as well. Second poll question.
Yes. Yeah. Second question is also important just to understand more about you today. So if you had to place your organization on the web personalization maturity curve, where would you say you are right now? Is it the foundational stage, intermediate, or maybe you are advanced? I hope that we don't have too many people who say not sure yet, because good to know where you are at any stage. Even if you're in foundational, that's fine as well. But it is important to to see and to get like a good impression. How do I get from here to the next step? You need to know where you are right now. So let's close this poll. I think that everybody already voted.
Interesting.
Interesting. Avishai, we have primarily foundational stage here. What does it say? Again, I'm asking you to compare in other presentations that you're doing. Is it what you see in B2B?
Yes, I think that personalization has always been put off to, we'll do this next quarter, we'll do this next year. There was never, like we've heard, never enough resources, never enough time. And I think until the latest innovations and transformations in AI and data connectivity, it was really, really hard to execute it well. So a lot of companies just said, let's slate it for the next CMO that will come in, right? But what we are seeing now is, because of these increasing pressures to sell, we need to get much better and much more precise and effective. Personalization is now becoming a topic of interest. They are thinking about how to achieve it. And it's not just, I need personalization. I need to get better results from my existing investments. I think this is the foundation. I need better ROI. I cannot continue doing my old activities with these results, and I'm not going to get more resources. So the thing I have to crack is, how do I generate more from what I have? And this drives us to all these areas that are really not sexy. Optimization, that's never sexy. And personalization, that's always a big headache. But I think we're seeing that now becoming a foundational issue, a key issue. You see that as well, by the way.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think a lot of people that I speak with, I think they have some perception issue with personalization. So that means that they think that personalization is almost the impossible stage. Where are we going to do it next? How are we going to do it? Will it require a lot of manual work? Wait, but we are already full with all the things and all the tech that we need to manage. How can we add another element of it, which is primarily manual work? That's a lot of concerns that I hear around.
And I think, just to also connect it to a big and legitimate concern, is, how do I know if I'm successful if I don't really know how to measure it? Right? If I'm doing an improvement to sales, I can see an improvement to pipeline, to revenue generation. But because personalization deals with different aspects of experience, of multiple touch points in the buyer journey, because there is a lack of foundational measurement, right? We are not measuring this well. We're not measuring our website effectively as a B2B, right? I'm not saying that we know our traffic, but our traffic isn't the main factor or KPI in a B2B website. And so I think this kind of leads to this because we don't have this measurement foundation. It's very hard for us to invest in something because we won't know what's the ROI we're getting from that. And I think this is also creating a big challenge for adoption.
Exactly. And also, I think it's also, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it's always people think that the only KPI they need to measure is the conversion on the web, how many people fill in a form or how many people contact. Right. But there are more than that, right?
Yes, definitely. I think we talk a lot in the content we write about the fact that as B2B marketers, we inherited tools from B2C. Just to give you an example, Google Analytics, fantastic solution for measuring B2C website effectiveness, e-commerce, publishers. Horrible tool to understand if your B2B website is performing, right? Because we don't just care about traffic, we care about visiting accounts and ICPs. We don't care or care less about website conversions. We care more about pipeline conversions, which happen in our CRM, which require certain integrations. And we care more about the journey than just the performance of a specific page. So it's important whether a page has a high or low bounce. It's more important than when we have successful or unsuccessful journeys. So just to give you an example of why do we have those paradigm shifts, why do we need also different solutions and approaches when it comes to B2B and not just say, hey, now let's take what B2C has done and what's been working for them. All right, so let's talk now about effort and what do we recommend to do at different stages. So if you remember, we talked about those 3 gears, the early adopters. So I'm speaking to the majority of our audience at this webinar, the foundational companies that the companies at foundational personalization stage. And what we have here is in this matrix is simply a connection between the connection that we see between impact versus effort. And what we typically recommend also our customers when we start working with, and also, as Shimon is working with customers on personalization, is let's start with what's easy and impactful first. Let's get those quick wins. Let's see what drives results, build confidence, and then move to those more advanced gears. I think a problem that we see some companies do is that they start at advanced stages with more complex things. They don't have the resources and bandwidth, so they just give it up and they don't do anything. And we think we need to figure out a much better way to onboard and to scale this. And this is what we're proposing today. So I'll just start here at the left. The left here is actually what we call the simple rule-based CTAs. You get them in many very many web solutions. You can throw pop-ups at different places on your websites. They're very simple, low effort, but also very low impact. And the reason is there's not much logic or data behind them to fuel a more effective engagement. What is more effective that we see and is automated, so it's low effort, so it's up here at the low effort, but it's higher impact, is automated content, personalizations, automated content recommendations that are data-driven, that are performance-driven. Even that change, that seems pretty minute, is very significant. So we see across the board about 4.5 times higher conversion rates to high intent from visiting accounts by those that engage with those types of units. So it's a massive improvement with very little lift and very little effort in terms of bandwidth and team, and it's an always-on activity. So we're talking about, and I'll show examples, we're talking about those content recommendations embedded in your site, on the site or in the bodies of your blogs, simple, automated, impactful. As we move down the gears, as we switch gears, we can talk about more specific, targeted, precise calls for action for accounts. So we can now take it to a deeper level and target specific industries with specific messages at different stages. So getting a bit more advanced in our personalization. We'll show some examples of that as well. And the last 2 that we wanted to kind of hover on, last 3, are what we call the page level. So if at the top here, we talk more about journey level, how do we support the journey? And this is what we believe and see as the most impactful at the beginning. only as we get to the advanced stages do we now need to really do a lot of page level personalization. What I mean page level is changing elements or personalizing specific elements in a page. And I think that's another misconception, that when you say personalization to people, that's where their mind goes to. They said, okay, we can change, this button from red to green, or we can test this, or we can do that. That's not the main type of personalization we recommend to start with, or even as the most effective at those earlier stages. It is effective at more advanced stages. And then, of course, we get to different assets that your sales can leverage. If it's streams or one-to-one landing pages that your sales teams can leverage. Again, more advanced, more complex. So it is in the higher effort and maturity area, but they also yield higher impact. On the other side, and that's something that's a bit funny, because that's a capability that Trend even also supports, but contact level hyper personalization, which means that I'm able to send to specific people specific pages with their names. Sometimes you get to a point where over personalization is already not effective. It's just generating more effort but not yielding the same uplift that we expect. So there is this trend that when doing too much, you can also start seeing less results or a lesser impact, even if you have invested more effort there. So a bit on that. So let's look at some examples and see how that actually looks like in real life. This is an example from Monday. Just at the bottom here, what we can see are automated content recommendations that are performance driven. So we identify the content which is converting. We can connect it to different audiences or personas as suggested. It's very native, it's very natural, non-intrusive, and highly effective at those earlier stages. Very easy to get started and automated, so you don't need to go and manage it or test it and so forth. Then another example is in Trending Minutes called the autopilot, which is these sets of recommendations per account. So today with AI, one of the new opportunities that opened up is this ability to create custom journeys at scale for every account based on what they've already seen, based on their industry, based on what we know they're looking for. And we can build those at scale, and we can serve them on the website. We can even send them through email. So as they get to the website, they can get to these reading lists and then continuously updating. Again, always on self-updating, self-optimizing. So no effort, and really doesn't take your team any bandwidth. These are the things that we recommend kind of on the first gear. As we move kind of to a bit more advanced capabilities, we have those embedded CTAs, embedded overlay, but the uniqueness is that they are connected to position in the journey, to identity of accounts, to their industry, so we can get more surgical, more specific in who we target and where we target them. And as you can see, all these examples, we don't think of them naturally as personalization, right? But this is personalization. It's not just, hey, I changed the name or changed the button. It has to be a seamless, natural part of the experience in the website. And at the upper levels, this is what we talked about, page level personalization. This is an example from Perforce and how they are changing some landing pages. So whenever different visitors from different companies and accounts are visiting, they are getting different text messages, experiences that resonate more with them. So very effective, but only after you've gotten through kind of the first parts and you already established a good foundation and connectivity there.
Yes, great. So we talked about account-based marketing signals. So signals can be intent, right? What do you know about your accounts? Are they coming to your website or not? How are you measuring those intents? And one of the things that would like to know from you is that, where are you in this measurement of the account-based signals? So please let us know, is it fully inconsistent? Is it not across all accounts? You're starting to, or you're just planning to, or it's not relevant for you or not, you're not I hope that everybody voted now and have their answer. So let's see what's the answer. Yeah, so there are not really measurements of the account-based signal. So what accounts are visiting our website? Do we bring them the right account to the website, etc., etc.? All the nice things that you can measure with Trendemon, right?
Yeah, Shimon, and I think what we wanted to share also is that things don't have to be difficult. So we're trying to break those misconceptions that personalization has to be very difficult or that measurement is something that's very difficult. Because if it's difficult, it just won't happen. So I think what we can do now is maybe show just a quick demonstration of how in Trending we measure the impact of personalization as a framework. And again, you can take it to your company's work with your product. So the idea here really is to help you think about the framework that can work. So we'll go to a live demo just to show that as an example. Can you see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Yeah, perfect. So this is taken from the Trendemon dashboard, but as an example, the way that we demonstrate the impact of personalization and measurement. And you know what, before we talk about personalization, it starts with getting account-based signals. So the first foundation is we need to be measuring accounts visiting, not just website traffic, not just page views or web visits. We need to be looking at account level data. And that's why we built the GTM Compass. And this is, by the way, a solution that any company that works with Spot on Vision can get at no cost. So for Spot on Vision clients, this solution is free. And we will have a special offer for all you participants to the webinar to be able to experience some of that. But we see this as a very foundational aspect of measuring the right thing. The right thing is accounts. We are selling to companies, so we need to understand how accounts are performing. And so with this solution, which is basically a tag that you put on your website, you can start looking at these insights of which companies from which verticals are engaging, are moving through the journey. So just to give you a sense of what we're seeing here, this is the transition of companies through the website. So this is first-party data. How many companies are proceeding, so reading more than one page on your site, and how many of them have reached first-party high intent. First-party high intent means they've engaged with high intent pages, if it's product pages or book a demo and so forth. And then, of course, how many have converted to deals or different pipeline stages and so forth. So this is the perspective that we recommend, first of all, talking about silos. So to looking at that from that perspective, and of course, augmenting it with the content, how content is impacting those transitions between those different stages. We think this is a much more effective view than just looking at traffic or classic web funnels that classic web analytics share.
So just maybe to clear out here, Avishai, first of all, Qua interface is much more friendly than Google Analytics, but the extra advantage is that you can see really the accounts that are coming and visiting your website. You can see what content they use in their journey, and you can see actually also the journey that they went through. And you can also see eventually, or actually the channels that brought them to the website in the first place, right?
Yep.
Either in the first or in the second visit. And eventually you can see what is the last mile that made some conversion, right? What is the action or the content or the one thing that eventually make them sign. We can see here that the webinar sign up was actually the thing that made them leave their details on. So
Yeah.
looking at that, Avishai, from a perspective of people that are relatively new to ABM, why is it important to see this?
I think that it's important for a number of reasons. The first one is to understand if our go-to-market is effective. We need to understand if we're able to effectively attract and engage the relevant companies, right? That's the first thing. If we're not attracting, engaging our ICP, we need to go back and we need to change that, right? Otherwise, it doesn't make any sense to continue doing or investing in what we're doing. The other thing, which is also something that a lot of companies I think struggle with, is how is our content? So now today, it's very easy to generate tons of content. We can spin up articles, posts, white papers in seconds. But the bigger question is, it actually giving value to our buyers, or is it just creating noise? And measuring that is also that challenge. And I think the last point is about what you said about this attribution aspect, which is also this big headache of marketers. And attribution, you always talk about these elaborate models, again, that we inherited from B2C with last touch and first touch and all of that stuff, which, let's face it, in B2B is not really effective, because look at this. This is a typical B2B journey. You have so many different sources participating. You have so many different touch points. To say that if I were to look like it's just the last mile, right, I would say, all right, direct was most effective. Okay, great. So we need to invest in direct. Okay, not really helpful there, right? So I think this is something that we need to think about in those different stages in terms of the account signals, the identification. We need to think about the content, and of course, understanding and connecting them to journeys and channels. So how does it all fit together in connection to outcomes? Because at the end of the day, we care about this, the generation of pipeline. So we need to have those systems connected to our business systems, not just our web systems. So our web and CRM, they need to be connected and aligned.
And Avishai, you brought the CRM. I want to connect the needle again to our most important counterparts, that's the sales team. What's the value for them here?
So this, for example, is a report that SDRs, BDRs, AEs can get through Slack, through email, or in their Salesforce. And it helps them very quickly understand what this account is interested in. So instead of just giving them a score, right, telling them this is an account that's had a high score or high intent, we can actually feed them with information that helps them have a contextual conversation. In this case, what we did is we took all the content and we put it through an LLM model, and we said, okay, summarize what this account cares about and what's their level of intent. And we get a very concise and clear summary that a BDR can use as a way to prepare for conversation, to reach out, or even have the system suggest which content we should share with them. What is the best content for them to engage at this point after they've read all these different pages? So, and again, this is a synergistic move, because then what would the sales team do? They would engage them, and a lot of the buying committee would go back anonymously into the website and continue browsing, right? And so you would want to have those signals feed back to the sales team and say, this is what changed, right? Up until now, we've been able to engage only one person. Now we have 2 people from the company, 8 visits. So we're starting to kind of penetrate the buying committee. This is why the account temperature is rising, the account score is rising, and we're using account-based signals. And all of this can happen even without anybody filling a lead form, right? It doesn't all have to be the MQL. That's not the key objective there, right?
Exactly. So Avishai, this is great insights. I love it because I'm using it on a daily basis. But how do you make the connection to the web personalization, to the personalization bit?
Great. So just to give you some example of how we're measuring those uplifts, if you can see those blue circles here, each of them indicate an interaction with a personalization unit, right? With some change that we've done on the website. So what we can start to connect is to see which journeys have been influenced by personalization versus those that haven't. And so when we do this connection, what we're able to show is and this is what we care about. We care about the engagement uplift and the conversion uplift of these 2 groups, the ones that have engaged with those units versus those that haven't. And when we have this, and you mentioned the connection to the CRM, to sales team, we can even connect it down to the revenue. We can even connect it to different deal stages. And then we can start showing those uplifts in a business context. you want your marketing to have a seat at the revenue table, to be part of the revenue organization, and not be just like, okay, we are the lead providers, or we are the ones that help you with the events. The marketing team is a central part of the revenue generation process. They have to speak in revenue terms. What is the influence on pipeline, influence on revenue, as well as personalization and the website are parts of that. So we have to demonstrate the ROI of the website in euro or dollar or yen terms, but we need to be speaking in commercial terms, financial terms, rather than, we've gotten so much more traffic. Your CFO doesn't care about the traffic that your website generated, right?
Yes, exactly. Avishai, we are coming almost to time. And of course, we're going to share with the audience an opportunity to implement this insight generation feature of your product free of charge, so that they can actually get these views from their website tomorrow when it starts to gather data just by implementing one tag right on the website, so that we can collect or the tool can collect the insights and give them I would call it an X-ray view what's happening on the website. So this is one thing. I would like to end, Avishai, by asking you a question. You know that I'm always like to think about the future. So looking ahead, where do you see the biggest opportunities for innovation in website personalization in B2B? Like if you look at the next year and a half, let's not go too far, but where is the market going in that sense?
Well, yeah, I think a very big question. I think that it's hard to avoid the topic of AI, but I think we're seeing a very massive transformation in how humans are consuming information. So if in the past we browsed websites, content, read, we are now we are now expecting answers rather than, working at creating those answers for ourselves. So I think that's something that changes us as a society, as humanity. We're changing the way we're interacting with information, of course, as buyers.
Yep.
And I think this forces us also as marketeers to change our approach. So how do we have our assets, our content be more contextual, even not just personalized as a topic, but as really contextual, that has an understanding of who is in front of them, how can I best serve them, how can I give them the answers they need at the right time. And this is what we're looking at trending in terms of the website. The website will undergo, in our view, a very massive transformation. We're also already starting to see a drop in organic traffic because people are just getting the answers from Google automatically, or they're just searching ChatGPT. So that is changing. So we need to have our websites not only serve humans, but also serve agents that will go. And just to give you one topic, there was a big discussion about gating versus guiding. Do we want to gate a lot of our content so people will leave their contact information, or do we want to open it? Well, guess what? If you're gating a lot of your content, AI can't access it as well. So you're missing a big part of being in the conversation. If they can't get to your content, you're not going to be part of their training model. And so these are just some of those shifts that are happening. And again, they talk about why do we need to transition to ABM? Because those lead-based approaches just are not simply effective, especially in our day and age.
Okay, great. So I really want to thank you, Abhishek, for taking your precious time and sharing with us some insights around web personalization.